You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
#1 show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high. A lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar M. Khatib.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Happy 2024. It's going to be a great year. It's going to be a great year. We had a fantastic 2023. Thanks to you, the listener. Our shows shot up through the charts. We are the #1 show in the industry based on downloads, based on reviews. We appreciate it. Subscriptions. We're off the charts on all of those things. Please continue to support us. Just give us a quick 5-star review. Make sure to subscribe. Extra friendship points if you decide to subscribe both on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. You know, that helps the channel out. So for the first episode of the year, I was trying to think about what's the one we kick off with. We do a leadership one, we do one on technology, and you know we record some of these in advance. And so one that I recorded actually in I think November, December was a patient story. So this is our inaugural episode to kick off our patient series. And the way this came about was I was at AdvaMed's their MedTech summit, MedTech conference here in Irvine. They're doing it again in Toronto this year in 2024. And so AdvaMed is an arm of our industry that fights for us on Capitol Hill, deals with a lot of regulations, etc. And so when I was at their conference, there's a lot of sessions on innovation and everything, but then they had these patient story sessions. And the one that I saw, just because we were connected on LinkedIn, it was with Dr. Alan Burton, who's the chief medical officer over at Abbott. And the person that he was doing it with was Darryn Wright, who was a patient who had suffered from Parkinson syndrome at a very young age, by the way. I think when he got diagnosed, it was like late 30s or early 40s. And him, Darryn essentially telling his story of what it was like to get diagnosed and really feel like his life was taken away. And then through the innovation that Abbott has, which their device was the Infinity Deep Brain Stimulation System, right? So that DBS device, and how DBS gave Darryn his life back. And it really touched me, because I feel that, one of the reasons why I stay in this industry is because of the massive impact we have on people's lives. I think for many of you who are listening, especially for the reps who are out there, you're grinding every day. We always hear this saying, like, do what's best for the patient. But I think it really puts in perspective when you get to hear these stories and hear directly from these people how their life was like before these medical technologies, these breakthroughs, gave them their life back. And so I'm going to be doing more of these. If you're a company and you have a patient, a great patient story like this, please shoot me a message. I want to do more of these. And again, just for context, this is not a sponsored episode by Abbott. I went in and chose to do this one. And mainly because I want to do more of these. I think it's good for us as an industry to hear these stories and give these patients a platform to share. And especially for somebody like Darryn, one of the reasons why we put a lot of SEO and marketing behind all our stuff, but especially this one, because you never know who out there, either themselves or loved one, was diagnosed with this scary, scary diagnosis of Parkinson's. And for them to hear an episode like this and be given some hope that they can get their life back, again, thanks to these amazing breakthroughs in technologies that our engineers, our product people, and everybody find a way to kind of bring to market. And so if you want to connect with Darryn is actually on LinkedIn. He's his name is spelled Darryn, Wright, Darryn Wright. And also I want to give a quick shout out for his blog, punkrockparkinsons.wordpress.com. So definitely go follow Darryn. I think he's going to start a newsletter or podcast. He's going to be doing some more things around Parkinson's awareness, but also if you're in the DBS space, go read his blog, punkrockparkinsons.wordpress.com. And it'll kind of give you his journey where he was diagnosed, going through the whole procedure, life afterwards. And so it's a really fantastic blog, well written, to give you that kind of perspective. So with that being said, here's our episode with Darryn Wright. And if you're a patient who is listening to this and you want to learn more, go and check the show notes below. I have 2 links there for you. One is to Darryn's blog. The other one is to Abbott's, the DBS device that Darryn talks about. It's to that landing page so you can get more information. So with that being said, here's our episode with Darryn Wright. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. And I guess you can say this is our very first and inaugural patient story episode. So I was recently at AdvaMed, and at AdvaMed, it's a big conference for our industry. As you know, AdvaMed is sort of the lobbying arm for our industry that really goes to Congress and, helps install a lot of, rules and regulations to improve the industry. But part of the thing that they had at AdvaMed were these patient stories. And there's one that I went and sat in on, which was Darryn's session. And it really inspired me a lot because I'll tell you, I think what we do in this industry is great. We're not working at Instagram or Twitter. No offense to those people, but we do something that really impacts patient lives and, changes lives. And so seeing Darryn, who's a young guy, and hearing his story and everything was just so remarkable that it kind of inspired me to say, hey, we should start doing some patient stories on the episode. So Darryn, thank you so much for being open to this. And how are you doing? You're in Texas, right?
Yeah, just outside of Houston.
The great state of Texas. So I tell people I live in Southern California, but I'm from Texas actually.
Cool.
Yeah. So originally from El Paso, Texas. So Darryn, maybe let's start out maybe we'll jump to the punchline. But what was it that you were diagnosed with, and what did you speak about at AdvaMed, and then we can kind of jump into your story more.
Sure. Well, I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease. April 22nd, 2015. I was 44 at the time. And so that's when my diagnosis took place. And then since then, I've, I found out that through my research at the time and trying to figure out what I had, that there was very little known out there really about Parkinson's disease, period, let alone young onset. And so, since then, it's been, coming up on 9 years. I've been really driven to just advocate for Parkinson's disease, get the word out there, get the knowledge out there about it and how it affects people on an everyday basis. And then, of course, I have the Abbott DBS system implanted in myself, and they had invited me to AdvaMed conference to speak on that and just kind of tell my story and what their device has done for me and some of the features that they have that other DBS companies do not have, and such as the virtual clinic and stuff that I think we talked about a little bit at that AdvaMed conference. So yeah, that's where I'm at now today.
So let me ask you a little bit about your, your life at home. So you're in Texas. From my understanding, you have, I believe, 6 kids. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, we're a combined family. I have 3 from previous marriage, and then my wife has 3. But they're, older and grown up now and gone. But yeah, there for a while, it was a pretty crazy household.
Yeah, I bet. And nothing says success to me more than having a big family. For me, I just started my family, so we have our one, and we're going to work on it.
Cool.
I'm in negotiations with my wife, because at the end of the day, she's the one who's carrying the babies, not me.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
But, you were diagnosed at a really young age. So first of all, early onset, Parkinson's, was that something that existed on either side of your family?
No.
So this really came out as a huge surprise. What happened in the early days? What was life like, and how did you kind of figure out you needed to see somebody?
Well, I was, when it started in my right foot, just a slight tremor, and it was really only in the evenings when I was driving home from work, and my right foot would just bounce real slightly on the gas pedal, but not enough that it would make the car, accelerate or decelerate or anything like that. But I could move my foot and stop it, and didn't really think much of it, And at that time, I was in a pretty stressful position in the place I worked, and so I, of course, my excuse was it was just stressful, and then and eventually it started coming to my right hand. The tremor did, but it was only at night when I was sleeping, and I'm a side sleeper with my arm, up and my head on it. And my hand would start tremoring a little bit, and I would be able to move it, and it would stop, And this went on for a few months. And then one night, me and my wife were watching TV and on the couch and holding hands, and my hand was tremoring. I was just sitting right there next to her, and she looked over me and asked me if I was doing that on purpose, and I said no, it just does that sometimes, And then I proceeded to tell her everything else that had been going on for the several months prior to that, and my wife is a nurse, so she was like, "We're getting you in to see the doctor immediately." And so we made an appointment with my primary care doctor at the time. And I remember it being around lunchtime, that appointment, and I hadn't eaten. And so I made it, I went to the appointment and stuff, and he's having me hold my hands out, and, in front of me and stuff. And my right hand was shaking, and he saw it. And I said, I haven't eaten yet today, so I'm just a little shaky, and then he did some other tests, and said, I think I'm going to go ahead and refer you to a neurologist, nothing to freak out about, but anyway, so then I got the initial appointment with a neurologist there in town where we were living at the time. Excuse me. And she, proceeded to do some of the same tests that really I do every time I meet with my neurologist, holding out the hands and tapping the fingers and, making fists and all that kind of stuff. And she said, well, I'm going to line up some other tests for you. We're going to get a MRI, and we're going to get a DAT scan, and, make sure we can rule some things out, one of those being Parkinson's, the other one being a tumor. And, she told me the story about that she had a lady that presented with some of the same symptoms I did. And, they sent her for the same testing. Turns out she had a tumor in her head. And when they removed that tumor, then all her symptoms went away. And so I think I said this at the Advocacy conference, that was the first time in my life that I was ever hoping for a brain tumor. And but anyway, of course, I didn't have one. And then the DAT scan, what it does is they inject this chemical into your body. I'm not sure if you've heard of a DAT scan or not, but anyway, what it does is that stuff, it goes up to your brain. They inject it, and then you have to wait for like 2 hours or whatever for it to get through your system. And they do a scan, and what that shows is the dopamine, if there's dopamine loss on either side of the brain. And not a lot of doctors use it because it is not 100% accurate. I mean, currently there is no 100% test that says, blood test or anything like that says, oh, you have Parkinson's disease. Anyway, my DAT scan did come out showing that I did have reduced dopamine production on the left side of my brain. And during that time, because it was, a few weeks between the MRI and then getting the DAT scan lined up and insurance approvals and all that stuff, I started digging in and doing research. And of course, I knew about Michael J. Fox because I'd always been a fan of his, going back, even back to Family Ties days, when I was a kid. And so I started reading on the Michael J. Fox Foundation website, and then, just doing other research on medical websites and stuff, and talking to my wife about it. And I'm like, I have a feeling I have Parkinson's, So then I was like, okay, so how do they deal with this? And so I, of course, started researching the drugs and all the different agonists and stuff like that. And I learned that cinnamon, which is basically man-made dopamine, was the gold standard of Parkinson's drugs. And reading about all these other drugs that are agonists that are supposed to help, help the cinnamon or whatever, carbidopa, levodopa, last longer and that kind of stuff. But they came with this myriad of side effects. And I had zero interest in that. I just wanted to take a drug to where I could function, not tremor. I could answer the phone. I could type on the keyboard. I could move my mouse. I could walk. I didn't have to worry about my leg bouncing under my desk. And anyway, we got the DAT scan back, and then, she had me do some writing tests and stuff like that, that show, I think it's called micrography, or I think it's where your writing gets smaller as you're writing letters and stuff. And and then drawing these spirals and stuff. And of course I had, tremors because so my spirals were all jiggly and stuff. And she gave me one of the pills in the office, and then they usually wait, 15 to 30 minutes for it to kick in to see if it'll help. And that's the main way they pretty much firmly diagnose Parkinson's disease right now. And of course it worked for me. So I said, and she talked to me about all the other drugs and that kind of stuff. And I said, no, I want to go right on Cinnamon. Because I want to function. I've got to work. I'm only 44. I mean, we kind of freaked out because here I am 44 and I'm diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And, it's like, what are we going to do? What's my future going to be like? We just didn't know a lot about as far as down the road and how things progress and stuff like that. So, anyway, I started on Cinnamon right away, and, that worked for me for quite a while. Of course, Parkinson's is a progressive disease, so it never stops. Your dopamine production just gets worse and worse and worse. And so you have to start increasing the drugs or changing them, because there's other ones out there like Wright and that kind of thing that they have a component that helps it's almost like a time release. So instead of, you're taking that Cinnamon and getting as much of it as they can past the blood-brain barrier. This helps it kind of last longer through the day. And that particular brand, Wright, they have a lot of different milligram doses. So you can play with all these different doses to get where you need to be. And then you can add as you're progressing. Go ahead.
Quick question. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what, when you were first diagnosed, what went through your mind, especially you were young. I mean, when this happened, you were diagnosed, you said 43, 44 years old.
44, yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, what was that day like for you?
It was a little bit of a shock, but like I said, we had been doing a lot of research beforehand.
So you had an idea, like, it could be this. Yeah.
And so at that point, that day, it was almost kind of a relief.
You had an answer, right?
Yeah, I had an answer. We knew what it was, at least. And I knew that they at least had this pill that could help control it. Now, of course, I didn't totally understand all of Parkinson's and the progression and having to increase the pills and the dosages and that kind of thing. But that day was it was almost a relief, but a little bit of shock, and of course the why me, goes through your head, because I didn't have anybody in my family other than, I think there was a great grandma that got diagnosed with Parkinson's, but she was like 80 and in a nursing home, and so other than that, there was no reason. I didn't grow up around a bunch of pesticides. I didn't lick lead paint off the walls that I recall, and, all these different variants that they think can cause that. And so it was definitely it's like, man, what the hell, I don't know why it landed on me, but it did. So, here we are.
Yeah. And, I was going to say, that what's interesting to me is, like, so had, some of the improvements in technology on the DBS side not been there, maybe we can talk about that first, like, just so that, again, a lot of the audience who's not familiar with this, if DBS wasn't a thing and you didn't have the Abbotts of the world and all these different options, like, what would your life be like now if you didn't have that kind of a treatment?
My life would be, it'd be pretty rough right now. At the peak of my medication, not that I couldn't take more, but when I had decided to go for deep brain stimulation, I was taking, I think it was 20 or 24 pills a day. And Parkinson's people have, especially on medication, have what are called on and off times. On times being the medication's working, you're functioning good, and then off times being, the tremors are there, the everything, And my big symptoms by the time I was on that amount of medicine was I had tremors in both sides at that point because it had progressed. I had a hard time talking. I start stuttering, very difficult walking, freezing, where you're walking and I didn't have initial really freezing as far as like if it was a good open space, but like going through the doorway, my feet would just stop, and that kind of tripped me out just because in your head you're just thinking, okay, I'm going to walk through this doorway, but the message here isn't getting down to the legs to move, and so you kind of have, you just have to figure out a way to get past that freezing point.
That must have been a wild feeling. Like you're just something. I mean, I think it's something. It's so simple. Like it's funny that until you lose something or you get sick, like you don't you take for granted simple things. So literally, just walking through a door, you would be going to the door and you would just stop.
Yeah, you would just stop. Your feet would stop moving for whatever reason, and then
is that something common with people with early onset Parkinson's? Is just like difficulty walking through a doorway, or
that's actually a pretty common symptom down, especially as it progresses for all people with Parkinson's. Freezing can become a major issue. Some people have it a lot worse than others. I mean, I used to know a guy in the support group I used to be a part of. His name was Bob, and he would freeze just walking with his walker in a wide open room, and of course he was an older gentleman, but yeah, it's not necessarily something that everybody deals with, but it does happen a lot with anybody at any age with Parkinson's disease. It can definitely be a issue. And so, yeah, so it was, at
the time, Darryn, I'm curious, like your kids, how, like roughly what age range were they all?
We had some already out of high school. We had, my youngest at the time was, this is being almost 9 years ago. He would have been 9 at the time. And then, some in high school. And so they all took it pretty good. They didn't really understand. One of my bonus sons, my wife's oldest, it was kind of funny because what I didn't know how to tell everybody at the same time, because it was, with someone being in high school and doing their activities and that kind of thing, it was rare at that point that we had all 6 of them in the home at the same time. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to send out a group text because I didn't know what else to do. I especially with teenagers, that's the best way to communicate with them.
Definitely a teenager thing. It's like, well, I got diagnosed with Parkinson's. I'm just gonna have to send a text out to these kids.
Yeah, that's what it was. And
modern times call for modern solutions.
Exactly, especially with teenagers, And it wasn't anyway. So I sent that text out, and it wasn't 2 seconds after I'd hit send. Her oldest, James, called her up, and he's like, "What is that, Mom? Is Darryn gonna die?" And she's like, "No." So she had to calm him down, but they just didn't really understand it. And my youngest, I didn't text it to him obviously because he was 9 years old and didn't have a phone at that time, and he lived with his mom, and I'd get him on the weekends and stuff. And so, excuse me. So on the next weekend that I had him, I did text his mom and let her know what everything had happened, and that I was going to be talking to him about it and stuff. And so when I sat him down, and actually her, TJ's youngest too, because they're only, 4 years apart anyway. At the time, he probably would have been, 12, 13, somewhere in there. And so we sat down and explained to them. My youngest, again, I don't even know if he even ever heard of Parkinson's disease. And so he did tear up a little bit, but I had let him know, I'm not, this isn't something that, it's not like cancer where I have 6 months to live or, things like that. And so he got to where he was okay with it and kind of understood. I had found this book, I think it was on the Parkinson's Foundation website, and somebody had written it, and it was a very small book, but you could basically get for free or whatever from them. So I ordered it and had made sure I had that for him and gave that to him so that he could kind of read about it. It explained Parkinson's in very layman terms, easy for, children his age, kids his age to understand. So I think that helps some too, give him some reassurance. But yeah, it shook everybody up a little bit. I wouldn't say, it wasn't all these tears and big family hugs and that kind of stuff, but obvious concern for me and what was going to happen and that kind of stuff.
No, and understandably so, especially with kids. So,
yeah,
to first treat it, you're taking a lot of pills and everything. When you decided to go to do DBS or deep brain stimulation, what was that process like? And, eventually you ended up using, I believe it's the Abbott, is it the Infinity Deep Brain Stimulation System?
Yes.
So as a patient, obviously you do a lot of research, and when it comes to your health, if you're going to end up using technology, people are pretty sure that they're going to be the ones to pick which one to use. How did you go about that process? How did you work with your physician? And then how did you end up, why did you end up choosing Abbott's device over, let's say, anything else?
Sure. Well, I was searching for a support group at the time, and actually that took me a little bit of time to even search for, because I wasn't sure they existed, and so I had found a support group, and a gentleman by the name of Tommy Dubuque, who unfortunately we lost him in February. It's been almost 2 years, but he was like my Parkinson's dad. He meant a lot to me, and I know we'll talk about my blog later, but I do have a blog written about him and what he meant to my life. But anyway, I started emailing him, and he'd email me, hey, come to the support group. And I saw their website, and it's just all these old people. And I don't use that in a disrespectful term, but, and you're 44 and you're looking at people that are,
it's different.
65, 70, you're like, ugh, and honestly, my thought was, I really don't want to go there and see my future. So, what are these people going to tell me, And anyway, so he finally convinced me to go. And Tommy was a tremendous Parkinson's advocate, and he actually helped me drive my passion to get into Parkinson's advocacy as well. But with his passion, he brought in multiple speakers from, Abbott, Medtronic. I think Boston Scientific wasn't quite out with their system at the time. But then, of course, we, got a lot of other seminars from other drug reps and that kind of stuff. But Beth from Abbott came in, and she was the local DBS rep for Abbott at the time, and still is. And she gave a presentation on it. And I had kind of by then had a basic understanding of DBS, because there were Tommy, and then there was several other people in the support group that had deep brain stimulation surgery. And so I kind of had a basic understanding of it and what it could do. And I had done a little reading about it. And so anyway, Beth, I think she came one time, and the first time, she's great. To this day, Beth Irwin's still my rep, and she's a part of part of our family, But anyway, so just the way she presented and the way she went about things. And then she actually, I think I went down and talked to her. Me and my wife went down and talked to her that first time, and actually my main issue at the time was I did not have a good neurologist. And so she had recommended getting to a movement disorder specialist and getting in with Dr. Ramirez. And anyway, kind of helped me with that process. And then I think she came again. And at that time, I was not considering DBS at all. It was just interesting information. The drugs were doing okay. The different medication I was on. And so it really wasn't in my mind. I tell people I had a plan. Okay. When I got diagnosed, okay, I'm going to get, when I hit probably the 9 to 10 year mark, I'll look at DBS, because most everything I had ever read on young onset said that when you're diagnosed at a younger age, it progresses slower. And so I was like, okay, I got a good, 8, 10 years. This is good information. I'll take it in.
And then what happened?
Well, Parkinson's didn't work with me very well. on my plan. So anyway, she had come back, another time, and obviously we'd had some other reps in there talking about their systems. But the one thing that really snagged me with Abbott at the time was two things. Beth's compassion and her empathy for everybody in that group, and it was genuine. And I always say this, I really feel like, and really I think this is the case with anybody with a progressive disease or even cancer or whatever. I really feel that we have this innate ability to really see if someone's genuine or if they're just full of shit. They're just trying to peddle their product and get their paycheck.
Isn't it funny how when you're sick and not feeling well, that like it's almost like your spidey sense for BS just goes through the roof.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think, again, like, having worked in this industry and also myself in a different way, been a patient. I mean, it's okay for people when they're trying to, drive adoption of a product, and they're, these companies need to make a profit to function. That's totally fine. But if they don't, and it's very cliche, but it's very true. But if they don't really believe in putting the patient first, like, it really shows through, Sorry, but yeah, no, it's just so funny you say that, because like I went through that just recently where I was not feeling well and I was dealing with somebody and I was like, yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah,
Continue,
yeah.
Darryn.
Oh no, you're fine. And so anyway, one of the things in her presentation that really grabbed me was that Abbott had the ability to win. For instance, at the time they were working on trying to get MRI approval for the FDA. And some of the like Medtronic, of course, they were the first ones out there, and so they had achieved that MRI approval and stuff to where you could, you're okay to go get an MRI. It's not going to suck the battery out of your chest or anything. And so anyway, what the point was that some of these other companies, if they get that, then the patient has to come in and get a new generator implanted. Like an upgraded generator or whatever. Well, with Abbott, they were able to just push that. You go see the doctor or whatever, and the doctor could push that update to your existing generator or battery. And I was like, okay, and being younger, I think that Bluetooth technology or whatever kind of appealed to me. It's like, okay, this is a definite positive. And of course, I talked to Beth a little more about it, and we just decided that when the time come, Abbott was who I was going to go with. And then we had another friend in that was in that support group that she was actually, and she was a young onset. She was actually one of the first ones to get at that time it was called St. Jude Abbott Infinity DBS system implanted in San Antonio. And so I saw the huge difference it made with her as well. And so long story short, I'm reaching this, I'm 20 pills a day. Sometimes I'm getting a couple hours benefited out of these pills, and then off time would hit and it's not time for me to take another dose. And I'm shaking, I'm having a hard time talking, walking, whatever the case may be. Then, okay, it's time for my next dose. I take it. And then all of a sudden I get just this dopamine dump and I become dyskinetic, which I do this a little now when I'm talking and stuff, but, you get wiggly and you just can't sit still. And that, what I like to tell people is that's what you see with Michael J. Fox now, is when he's talking and wiggling around and moving and stuff, it's not Parkinson. It's a result of him being on the carbidopa-levodopa for so long that it just, dyskinesia becomes one of those things that you just have to deal with. Period.
Got it. So he's not on a DBS device, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Got
he years back, and this was before he even had made it public. They used to do it's some kind of brain lesion where they go in and burn something in a part of your brain that at that time was supposed to really help Parkinson's, people with Parkinson's. And and then after he had that, at that time they didn't know enough about DBS and stuff that when it didn't end up working out for him as well as he had hoped. At that time, it was like, well, now DBS isn't an option. And now I think he could get it. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, that's another topic. But so anyway, I was, just so tired of taking pills and just exhausted. I mean, my tremors were to the point that, because when my right hand would tremor, because I was worse in my right side than my left side. And when my right hand would tremor, my hand would fist up and I would just get just incredibly tight all the way through here. I mean, I don't know if you can really see, but like these tendons and stuff were just bulging out of my arm, all the way down. And I mean, it hurt. And my wife's sitting there trying to rub my arm and it's just barely any relief and stuff. And it's exhausting. I mean, it wears you out. And I just had enough. And I was with Dr. Ramirez, and we had, where he was at that time, they had the patient portal where you could go in and send them messages and stuff. And so I sent Dr. Ramirez a message and said, hey, next time I see you, I really want to discuss deep brain stimulation with you. And I think actually the next day, one of his nurses called me and said, Dr. Ramirez got your message and he wants to make an appointment as soon as possible. He has been waiting for you to ask about this. And so anyway, I met with him and we decided, he told me the process. And so we decided to go through with the process, and it was, go ahead.
I was thinking in a nutshell, what does that process look like, Because I think when someone, especially for someone who's not either in this industry or familiar, when they hear of deep brain stimulation, I mean, you can have some pretty graphic images that come to mind, but it's a relatively, I think, simple procedure, at least from my experiences. But I'm wondering, for in a nutshell, what was it like for you?
Yeah, well, there's some, the first step is you have to get you have to do an on-off test. So what you do is you going to see your movement disorder specialist or neurologist completely off your medication. And they do all the assessments with you and that kind of stuff. And then you go ahead and take your medication. They wait about 20, 30 minutes for it to kick in. Excuse me. And then they go through all the assessments again. Because the one thing I learned even before that was deep brain stimulation will typically only help someone with Parkinson's or their symptoms with the same thing that their medication helps with. So, because there's so many other symptoms of Parkinson's besides just the shakes that so many people don't know about. But if that medication is not helping your tremors and that kind of stuff, you're typically not a good candidate for deep brain stimulation. And anyway, fortunately, my medication did help at the time, or at least reduce the tremors and the stuttering and everything else that I was dealing with at the time. And so then the next step is doing a cognitive test, because they, at the time, this may have changed since then, they typically don't like to do DBS in people with deep depression, obviously any kind of cognitive decline, the name just left my brain, and which is kind of ironic. But anybody with any type of cognitive decline, like Alzheimer's or dementia, that was the word. And so anyway, I had to go and see a psychiatrist that works with them, and I spent 2 days. Actually, well, I split them up, so I did a half a day of all this cognitive testing with somebody. They'd read a story to me, and then they'd ask me questions, and I'd have to recall things, and I'd have to look at numbers and put them in the right sequence, how the pattern was going, and just put shapes in the right spot. I mean, it was pretty intense. I mean, it was half a day, and when I got done, I was exhausted. I mean, I went home and slept. And then the next one was the next day was basically just all these really psychological questions, or just asking you about you, and of course ask, just weird stuff, like, how do you feel about the color purple, and like, oh, whatever, I don't, whatever. And of course, then every now and then, you'd see this questionnaire like, have you had thoughts of suicide in the last 6 months, and stuff like that, which I understand. And actually, that, I don't remember how many questions it was, but I was there about a half a day. And same thing, I went home just worn out. And I was like, oh my God. And so then they take all those results and give them to the psychiatrist, who then, processes them, evaluates them. And then you have to go meet with him and discuss them and everything. And fortunately, all my testing was good, came out well. And then they take all of that, my on-off testing, and the cognitive, and Dr. Ramirez was on the board at the hospital he was at the time. And then they get together with several other movement disorder specialists and neurologists and determine if you're a good candidate or not for deep brain stimulation. And so then they notify you, basically, yes, you're good to move forward. And I was real clear to him from day one. I wanted the Abbott system. Again, doing my research on DBS, I then, he put me in touch with the neurosurgeon who was going to do the surgery. I met with him. I had several questions for him, questions that I had learned to ask just through my research, like, how many infections have you had? How many redos have you had to do? And that kind of stuff, and just getting to know him. And my neurosurgeon was a really cool doctor. I just loved him. And he's still doing neurosurgery, but I haven't seen him in a while. But anyway, so then we set a surgery date, and that was I want to say it was like March 3rd or 4th. I think March 4th of 2019, and they kind of talked to me about what surgery was going to be like and that kind of stuff. And so I had surgery, I think, on March 4th, 2019. And that was quite a process. It was the first surgery I'd ever gone into where I was not nervous at all. I had made a point of telling myself, if I come out of this 10% better, that's an improvement, and I will be thrilled to death. And of course, after you have the surgery, the DBS system, they didn't turn it on for another month. So I didn't have it turned on for a month because they want your brain to heal and that kind of stuff. I think since then, most of the people that I've known that have gotten it are turned on fairly quickly, actually, after the surgery, because I think they realize, okay, it's not impacting things that much. But anyway, yeah, so it was, I was awake for the surgery up until they put the battery in. And typically they don't like doing that at the same time. Most neurosurgeons prefer to do the implants in your brain first, and then have you come back 2 weeks later and implant the battery. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, so when after after the surgery was done, so surgery seemed like, how long was the surgery for, roughly? Like, I
don't. It was pretty long. I think my wife said about 6 to 8 hours, somewhere in there, 6-7 hours, because they you go in there, they shave your head, they then of course and before, I forgot this part, before the surgery, like 2 weeks before the surgery, I had to have these studs implanted in my head.
Right, to hold the
halo thing.
Yeah.
So they put that, they put those in. But anyway, then I got in there. I remember them shaving my head, and we're talking, and they got my head fixated and that kind of stuff. I was actually pretty calm. I wasn't shaking or anything, surprisingly, because I had to be off my meds completely. And so yeah, I remember drilling the holes in my head and that sound and everything. I remember them, they go ahead and turn it on to like test it to make sure that they have it implanted in the right spots, because your brain actually gives off radio frequency. And between that and the MRIs that they do beforehand, it helps them determine where and how deep, they implant them and stuff. And so I remember him asking me, he would do something and ask me to say something, and I'd slur my speech or whatever. I remember him causing my right foot to tremor, and some stuff like that. And then from there, it's pretty much a blur. Next thing I remember is waking up in my room because like I said, they put you out for when they're implanting the battery in your chest. So,
and after you got the DBS procedure done, and then you're able to finally like turn it on, like what was it like? Because it must have been a wild feeling where you didn't take your pills and you just kind of magically turned this on. Like what was that feeling like, if you can remember it?
Yeah, no, I remember that day really well. I was, I had to be completely off my medication, which is painful, but at the same time I had this excitement, like, okay, maybe, this is going to help. And, I have video on my YouTube channel, and my wife is videoing me, and I had to walk into the doctor's office with a cane, and I sat down, in his office, and he started pairing it up with their tablet and stuff so they could get all the readings. And then when they fired it up, and even to this day, if I do turn it off for whatever reason, and when I turn it back on, or if I just have to make some adjustments, like if I'm getting some tremors, I'll go ahead and, patients can have some control where they can bump it up a little bit. And, but you can, to me anyway, I could literally feel it going from my head down through my body, almost like, kind of like an electric current, but not like shocking or anything, but like you just feel this, I don't know. I best way I think I can describe it is maybe like if something scares you and you just feel that chill go from your head to your feet, that's what it felt when they first fired it up.
And then you just like magically your tremor stopped, or?
Well, it didn't instantly, because then they have to start fine tuning it. And so initially I was just, because with Abbott, I think they have, it's either 6 or 8 leads on each wire that's implanted in my brain. And, but they can choose whether to segment off or if they just want to power up the whole thing. And at that time I didn't really need any segmentation. So what they did, we were there a good 4 hours with Dr. Ramirez, and he, it was crazy. I looked at my wife several times because she was videoing, and I would just look at her mouth and like, holy shit. It was just unreal, because he could turn it up to where I was, I just felt good. And then, but he also wanted to see where my limits were on my right and left side. And so there were times, and it affects your speech and everything. And so he would turn it up and he goes, all right, now I want you to say this. And I think he had me say it's always sunny in San Antonio or something like that. And there were a few times where he'd turn it up and I could barely, it sounded like I had just went on a 3-day bender and could barely talk. It was crazy. And then he turned it back down, had me repeat it, and I could say it clear as day. Same with, he turned up one time on my right side, and my arm, because I was just sitting in a chair, my arm on the rest, and my right arm just went straight down to the ground, stiff as a board, and my right foot started turning in uncomfortably, and I couldn't even hardly move. I couldn't hardly say anything or anything. But anyway, so he would do that just to see where the limits were on different things and find my initial settings. And that's one thing people have to realize about deep brain stimulation too, when they get it, is it can take sometimes 3 to 6 months to a year for the doctor to get the initial settings just right and on point. Just because your brain's healing or your brain's reacting, it's getting constant stimulation rather than just the occasional stimulation from the medicine. And so I think people get impatient with that sometimes. But while I was exhausted that day, I walked out of there without my cane, feeling better than I had in 4 or 5 years. Just tremendous difference. It was huge. And I'm just blown away by that technology and what they can do.
Yeah. And again, this is part of the reason why, again, I want to have you on the show, and why, I'm really proud of what we do in our industry, because, I don't know, there's something about devices that's really magical. Pharma, there's some really impressive technology and things there, but there's something magical about the medical device industry, especially in the case of DBS, where I think like what's so dramatic is like you can you literally see the improvements and changes immediately. And I'm sure like your wife and kids, you know. So how long were you living with early onset Parkinson's before you had the DBS device implanted? Like about a year or two?
No, I had it turned on almost 4 years to the day that I was diagnosed.
Got it. So then, you know, you went a good amount of time where your family got used to seeing you this way. And then all of a sudden until you're as close back to normal as possible. I mean, you know, I was like paying attention to you on stage at Abbott and listening. And I was thinking, I was like, had you not told me, you know, because for me, I went to medical school, I have a medical background, but had you not told me that you were diagnosed with Parkinson's, like I wouldn't have guessed that you had anything like that even, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, to me, that's the best compliment you can get to the technology and everything. I mean, I remember the day that I was programmed, my youngest son was there at our house, and we got home and he came out and he looked right at me. He goes, "Holy cow, Dad, you have your smile back." You know, I mean, that was the first thing he said to me. And that was pretty cool to hear from him, you know, because you start getting that frozen face and where you're just not showing as much emotion, and even your voice becoming monotone. And, you know, I remember even before that, I was sitting in a recliner and my foot was tremoring. And even my oldest daughter looked at me, or she's my only daughter, but she looked at me and said, "Dad, are you doing that on purpose with your foot?" And I said, "No, that's Parkinson's," because it was just relentless. And I said, go sit in this recliner, put your foot up and just sit there and try to shake your foot nonstop and see how long you go. You know, she couldn't do it very long, you know, so it was, and then for them to be able to see after the fact that, man, my dad's not shaking, or, you know, it was just all the kids really could physically see the difference in me.
That's amazing. And,
yeah,
and it must,
yeah,
and especially
cool.
as a dad, like, you know, like being a father and being the man of the household and everything, like it's not fun when you feel weak or you're not in tip-top health, especially like around children. And so that must have been such an amazing feeling, especially the fact that you can smile again, you know, because like for kids growing up, just to go and see them do sports or something, and like the act of like, again, something that we all take for granted, which is smiling, right? And you weren't able to do that anymore. Now you're able to, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, it was cool. And, you know, because I had this fear of not being able to hold my grandkids, or if I held them, you know, I'd have to be sitting down and things like that. And yeah, just being able to, you know, it just, I mean, my main thing is I tell everybody is, I mean, it gave me my life back. You know, obviously it's not fully back, and it never will be. I still get tired pretty easy. Heat is a killer on me. I can't do near what I used to do. Obviously part of it's age, but the other part is Parkinson's. You know, I can only do so much physical activity and that kind of stuff. But to be able to start participating in that again, and start like we were building a chicken coop or we were in process to start building a chicken coop, and I had framed houses years ago, and so I had a framing background, but to be able to be out there with me and my wife and doing that, you know, and building that thing and not having to worry about running the saw or anything like that, you know, was huge for me, because I love doing that kind of stuff. I love doing woodworking. And yeah, I wouldn't be doing any of that if I hadn't had this surgery.
That's that's amazing. And I can see like it's like, you know, it's an intense feeling for you, and I can see it in your eyes. And understandably so. You know, as we kind of round out, and again, thank you so much for like coming on and just sharing your story. I wanted to talk, I mentioned it in our intro for the episode, but I want to talk a little bit about, aside from the patient advocacy work you're doing, but you started a blog, which is, let me see, I have this site up here. So punkrockparkinsons.wordpress.com. And then you started a YouTube channel. So while we're talking, I made sure to go do it. So I think with my different YouTube channels, you're over 20 subscribers now, but you also have Punk Rock Parkinsons on YouTube. And I saw like a bunch of your videos are there, which are great, actually, including the one from Advocacy. And I'll be sure to share this one with you so you can put it up on there. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the blog I started initially, I mean, my biggest frustration, especially when I started doing my research and learning about Parkinson's disease, was how little known there was about Parkinson's disease for really anybody, let alone young onset. The young onset Parkinson's disease brought an even bigger frustration.
Yeah, and very little. And it's funny. That's the reason why I wanted you on the show, because I remember sitting in the crowd listening to your story, and I was like, this is the first time I'm seeing someone else who's young talking about this, other than Michael J. Fox. And I've been in this industry for over 10 years now, right? So yeah, please continue.
Yeah, and you nailed it. I mean, most people, when they hear Parkinson's disease, they think tremors and they think Michael J. Fox, which is fine, I mean, but and really, why would anybody really dig into it if it didn't impact them personally, or someone in their family or friend or whatever? But just in the fact of me doing my own research and how much I had to dig and fight and try to find info on, like I said, particularly young onset Parkinson's disease, let alone regular, there's some great websites out there, and Michael J. Fox being one of them, Davis Finney Foundation, which is another tremendous website, especially for young onset. And Parkinson's Foundation website there, so there's some great stuff out there, great information, but most of it being geared toward older people. And, so, and they had all, talking about all these, therapies, like Rocksteady boxing and big and loud and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'd love to participate in some of these things. Well, you either didn't have access to that stuff on a local level, or B, if there was some access to it, it was during the daytime when I was at work, and so that really pissed me off, because, we can benefit as much from that as the older people. And there's only one proven way to slow down Parkinson's disease, or potentially slow it down, and that is through exercise. That's it. Otherwise it's like I tell people, I have DBS and you can't tell I have Parkinson's disease, but it's still trucking along, and on the occasion, and I have a few videos on there where I turn my device off. I think the last one being in February of this year. I flew up to Dallas to meet with Abbott, and actually it was pretty cool. They flew in. They had all people from all over the world on their. I want to say it was their quality control team or product control. Anyway, on that video, I turn it off so you can really see the difference in how I am with it and without it. I forgot where I was going with that, but anyway, I guess I was kind of talking about exercise. So there was just this lack of opportunity for anybody with young onset. And at the time, living in New Braunfels, Texas, just, which is about halfway between San Antonio and Austin, there was just nothing for young onset. And so with Tommy's help, who was running helping run the support group at the time, and actually me and my wife had taken it over for about a year and ran it, and we started looking for a boxing gym to try and bring Rocksteady to that town, and we found one, and Lone Star Parkinson Society, which I was president for a short time. They helped fund it and get it going, and we had night classes at the time, and it was just an awesome thing to get going, and so anyway, through all that, between lack of opportunities for exercising, other than I did find someone, we had moved up to Dallas, Fort Worth area. I had found another boxing class there, but the only opportunities were on Saturdays. And it was way up north of Dallas. We lived in Arlington at the time. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's great, but my Saturdays are my Saturdays. That's when I was doing my crafting and woodworking and stuff, or me and my wife running around, or we'd go down to New Braunfels to visit our kids or grandkids or whatever. And plus it was quite a ways away. And I really thought when I moved up there, it's like, man, this is a huge area. There's got to be all kinds of stuff. And again, there wasn't. And even now living outside of Houston, same thing. There are some great Parkinson's organizations that do some stuff, but again, nothing really for young onset. And so the blogs came because I was just kind of pissed off about all that, and pissed off about the lack of knowledge about Parkinson's disease in general, and being on groups in Facebook. And I don't want to say people were asking dumb questions, but it was questions that you're just like, how do you not know this? You are living with this disease. How do you not know this? Or the other thing was, why are you asking all of us? You need to be talking to your doctor, and so it kind of started out of that, a little bit of frustration. And so I just started I think it was June of 2017 is when I started it. Just kind of putting my feelings on paper. I'm not a writer, I guess paper I say, but on the screen typing. And I'm not a writer by any means. It's not obviously not professional by any means, but I speak my mind. There is cursing in there, and just what you get on there is me and my frustrations, and my also my victories, and exciting things that happen and stuff like that. And so that's why I started it, is just a way to maybe help other people on a more layman's term, that were experiencing the same things that I was and am going through. I don't think I have a lot of subscribers on there, which I guess I'm not too worried about. I would like to see more, because then I know they'll get the notification when I write an entry. And I'm not the most consistent person on it. I really have been trying to focus on getting at least once a month, but I would like to write some more than even that, maybe twice a month. But I do get a lot of reaction from it, and I do get a fair amount of views, because I can go on the background and see the stats and that kind of stuff. And so that makes me feel good, because I know people are seeing it at least. And I do get the occasional good comments, or positive feedback and things like that. I always, whenever I share the link, I always tell people, give me your feedback, positive or negative.
I read some of the entries, like the one with it was like me, Abbott, and the FDA, and I think the other one, can't remember what it was, but I remember it was in parentheses like there will be swearing or something. But what I'll say that is that you write the way you speak, which is, I think, a positive. That's the way you should write. And I think the other thing is that you keep it real. You're not trying to be anybody other than Darryn Wright, Yeah. And the one thing, at least for me as a content creator, I've been in the game, quote unquote, in the game. I've been doing this for a long, long time. What I would say is just explore different mediums. And I think, for example, if it makes you feel better, like driving traffic to a blog is not easy. It's really, really difficult. So I think YouTube, the YouTube channel is going to be fantastic, because, Google owns YouTube. So there's huge search involved in that. And I think these days more people, they're looking for information in video format more than ever, just because we're to that. Even our entertainment from Instagram, TikTok's all video. But no, your channel on YouTube, I think you'll see it'll grow a lot faster than you might expect.
I hope so, because I think that's going to be more of a and that's where the blog may, I'll always keep it going, because there's some things I'll just want to write. the video,
Some of those entries on LinkedIn as an article, by the way, too. I would encourage you to do that.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah, you can do. There's a lot of things you can do
okay.
on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does a bad job marketing itself, but so LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and so because of that, LinkedIn's not going away. But yeah, LinkedIn, you can when you go to write a post, there's a thing there that says like write an article. You can just take what you've written and just throw it up on LinkedIn. You can start a newsletter on LinkedIn. Just poke around. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I have a little mini course on it, so I'll send you access to it. You can check it out.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, because I've even toyed with the idea of doing TikTok, but I enjoy watching videos on TikTok, but I'm a little cautious.
I don't have the energy for TikTok. I think YouTube is probably, like, based on what I've seen of yours and everything, I think YouTube's a great format. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You might have fun with TikTok and Instagram Reels,
yeah, who knows?
Yeah. But hopefully, look, through this show, we'll hopefully drive some subscribers to you. But just in wrapping up, like, aside from your website and your YouTube channel, where else can people find you online?
On Facebook, just Darryn Wright, just how it's spelled. I will be getting a Punk Rock Parkinson's page going there on Facebook, and probably one on LinkedIn as well. Same with Twitter. I really don't post much on Twitter. I do more reading and maybe share it on occasion. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter. But I really don't do much with Parkinson's advocacy on there, or, well, I guess it's called X now or whatever. But anyway, but I would say Facebook, and then the blog and YouTube are probably the three best places to find me.
Yeah, and if I can give you some like just like social media marketing ideas, what I would recommend to you is, like, focus on the YouTube channel and then use LinkedIn, just because it's a huge professional network, and of course all the DBS companies and Parkinson's advocates are using it. I would really leverage LinkedIn to, like, help amplify and drive more awareness, and then of course you can drive that traffic to your blog and then to YouTube that way. And if you have questions, just hit me up. But for those of you who are listening to this episode, please do me a big favor. Look up Punk Rock Parkinson's on YouTube. Go and hit that subscribe button right now, because the other side is, as soon as we get you, I think there's a few other, like, criteria you have to, but after you hit some criteria on YouTube, then they turn on monetization, which means when they run ads on your channel, you get paid some of that. So we'll hopefully get you there sooner than later,
Yes, that'd be awesome.
Perfect. Well, Darryn, look, thank you so much, man, for coming on and sharing your story. Like, it was really inspiring, and it's so awesome to know that there's people out there like you who are taking, sort of a proactive role to amplify awareness, because there's a lot of people who don't know, and either they hear these things and the doctor doesn't explain it to them the right way, or a nurse or something, and then they put it off. But then if they get exposed to this kind of information through your channel, that's like one more life saved. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on here too. I really appreciate it. I mean, this is the first podcast I've done. So
you did. Cool. You crushed it. For your first podcast, you did a great job. You did a great job. You're going to do more of these for sure. Awesome.
But, yeah, definitely send me that link to that course. I will
send it to you right now. Awesome. Perfect. Well, for those who are listening, thank you for listening. There's another episode of the State of MedTech. And if you're a company who's interested in more patient stories, this is, again, something that I've really enjoyed doing. So go ahead and shoot me a message. You can shoot me a message on LinkedIn, or send me an email at hello@katibandco.com, or just go to my website, katibandco.com. Bye for now, and enjoy your evening. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of The State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has an executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@katibandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.